All right, John 3. Now, we're going to go one more week in John 3. I thought I was going to be able to finish. I made a decision late last night to split it up one more time. Some texts just lend themselves to that, and I think this is one of those texts. Okay. I'm going to act like there's 10 people here and say, somebody, anybody, tell me about John the Baptist. We're going to look again at John the Baptist this week and next week, and then we're going to say goodbye to him for basically the whole book of John. But what do you guys remember about John the Baptist? I know it's been a few weeks.
Not the question I was expecting. That's not the one I was ready for.
I don't know.
He was ready for Nicodemus.
I was just ready for the summary part of like what was most impactful.
Oh, okay, from last week?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
I
what was most
thinking.
impactful from last week?
I gotta find the exact verse.
This is the great thing about having two people. We can kind of do whatever we want.
Right.
It was verse 8.
Verse 8.
When the wind blows where it wishes, and you
Mm.
hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. I like that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Because I have an NIV Bible at home. This one's a study, so it tells me that it's talking about the Spirit. But if you read in another Bible, it doesn't say that. So like the correlation, how I had to think of it a different way.
Yeah. It's an epic conversation with Nicodemus. 21 verses.
Mhm.
And he gets the most famous statement in the whole Bible said to him. He gets at least 21 verses here, but this would have been a long conversation. Pretty amazing what he was given. And he ends up becoming a believer later on.
Later on.
Yeah.
At that time, he still didn't understand.
No, that was, that's the judgment that Jesus said. You don't accept our testimony. Okay, John the Baptist. What do y'all remember about John the Baptist? It's been a few weeks. We're in week 10, I think. Maybe that was like week 2, 3, 4, maybe? Something like that.
I do not remember.
Do you remember what his role was? What was he doing? Why is he in the book? How did he relate to Christ? Anything?
He was obviously baptizing people when Jesus was asked to be baptized by him.
Yep.
Instead, correct me if I'm wrong, he wanted to be baptized by Jesus?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. He kind of fought back a little bit, but Jesus says, no, we must fulfill all righteousness. I need to do everything that any other Jew would do to fulfill a righteous life, so then he can impute that righteous life to all who believe in him. All right, then I'll sort of give you some of them and we'll move forward. So John was the forerunner to the Messiah. He's prophesied in Isaiah 40, I believe, is one of the texts. He actually quotes that text to the Jews. If you go back to chapter 1, kind of the middle section of chapter 1, you see John, the big statement that you'll remember, verse 29, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." That was sort of the apex of his ministry. His job was to come before the Messiah and announce him to Israel. A good word for John would be a herald. The herald goes, in the ancient times, a herald will go before a king. When a king is going to pass through a city, he's going to announce that the king is coming, get everything ready, make preparations, he's coming. Any terms that would have been on the table, he would tell them, and then a few days, a few weeks, whatever, later, king would come through the city, and it's no surprise. That's exactly what John does for the King, the Messiah, Jesus. And he's prophesied in the Old Testament. He's clearly aware of his place in redemptive history. He knows he's the one in Isaiah 40. When the Jews ask him, I don't remember what verse this was, somewhere in there, I'm not going to try and find it. In that little section when the Jews come to him and say, "Who are you? You have all these crowds. What authority do you have? Who do you think you are?" He says he's not the Messiah a few times. John, the apostle, says that, then John the Baptist echoes that about himself, but then he quotes Isaiah 40 saying, "I'm a voice crying in the wilderness." I'm someone who is crying out that the Messiah is coming, the King is coming, and he does. He comes really quickly. Their ministries overlap by a period of a few months. John's ministry begins first. Naturally, he's the one proclaiming Messiah. And then Jesus comes, and there's an overlap period. We're going to kind of explore part of that overlap period today. If you remember, he was the most influential, incredible man in Israel. That's why John the Apostle calls him as a witness in the first chapter. That's sort of the MO of the first chapter, verbal testimony about who Jesus is. John the Baptist is one of the witnesses that he calls. And it carries so much weight because he was the most credible guy in the entire nation at the time. He built up a huge following, thousands and thousands of people coming to him. And last little point was he lived in Judea. He lived in the wilderness, and he preached in Judea. He would be baptizing people, preaching a gospel of repentance, like we talked about 2 months ago now, whatever it was. Crazy as that was that long ago. But that'll become necessary for what we're talking about here. So verse 22 of John 3, we're going to go down to verse 30. I'll sort of introduce the text and we'll get off and running. Verse 22, after these things, so after conversation with Nicodemus in Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples came into the land of Judea, and there he was spending time with them and baptizing. John the Baptist, also was baptizing in Aenon near Salem, because there was much water there, and people were coming and were being baptized. For John had not yet been thrown into prison. Therefore there arose a discussion on the part of John's disciples with a Jew about purification. And they came to John and said, Rabbi, he who was with you beyond the Jordan, to whom you have testified, behold, he is baptizing, and all are coming to him. John answered and said, a man can receive nothing unless it is given him from heaven. You yourselves are my witnesses that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent ahead of him. He who has the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. So this joy of mine has been made full. He must increase, but I must decrease. This is a great little section. And John, the account of John goes on a little bit. It's scattered throughout the other Gospels, particularly in Matthew, if memory serves me correct. There's a couple other little things that happen with John. But this is really the end of John the Baptist and the Gospel of John. After this, John is ushered off, and Christ is center stage and continues to be. So this is where I'm going to lean on my notes here. Okay, yeah. There's a few months overlapping of the ministries of Jesus and John. And just like verse 30 says, Jesus is on the increase, John is on the decrease, and that's sort of this moment here. That's kind of what this is about. If we go to the start of the section, verse 22, so they're in Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples. He was doing miracles. He's cleansed the temple. He's had the conversation with Nicodemus. Been there for a little while. Passover's over now. He's moving. This is what Jesus will do. He'll move around the country, preaching, teaching, doing miracles. So him and his disciples came into the land of Judea. That would be the wilderness of Judea, the Judean desert. There he was spending time with them and baptizing. So Jesus is baptizing, and if you go to chapter 4, verse 1, that gives us a little bit more information. It says, therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself was not baptizing, but his disciples were, he left Judea and went again into Galilee. That's a little helpful statement by John the Apostle. So Jesus is gaining more followers than John, is basically what he's saying. But also, a little subpoint to that is Jesus himself was not baptizing, verse 2, but his disciples were. So he's delegating baptism to his disciples, and probably what that means is Jesus is the one preaching, they're the ones baptizing. So he's got more followers than John. That's sort of the ministries are going like this. They're seesawing, and Jesus is surpassing John. And what's going to be John's reaction to it? That's sort of the whole point of the text. And one important note geographically here, Jesus goes from Jerusalem to Judean wilderness, which is John's territory, basically. That's where he's been, that's where he lived, that's where he preached. All the scene of him baptizing Jesus and all that we understand all happened in Judea. So Jesus comes out to Judea, John's area. He's now baptizing, and he's preaching. And then verse 23, John was also baptizing in Aenon near Salem, because there was much water there. People were coming to him being baptized. So John has now moved territories. He's gone north to Samaria, essentially, is where he is. So he's yielded up this territory to Jesus. Jesus comes in, and John moves out. He decides to go north and bring the gospel somewhere else. So that's an important point, and that'll be important here in a minute. That sort of sets up our text. Now, verse 24. Dylan, do you know? So it says, for John had been not yet been thrown in prison. I'm going to assume, Tony, you don't know this, and the only other person in the room is Dylan. So, do you remember what happened, or do you know what happens to John the Baptist in the end? Any recollection at all?
I mean, there's obviously a lot of terrible deaths, but I don't know which one he had. Can I get a hint?
On a platter.
Okay, yeah, wasn't he beheaded and he was put on a platter for like the king or something like that?
Right.
All right, I was getting there. I just needed a platter. That worked.
John's gospel is written after the other three gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I think I said last week that something like 90, I don't know how you quantify this, but 90% or so of gospels, John's gospel is unique to John. He fills in data that we don't know about from the other three gospels. And so if you think the other gospels would have been written a while before this, years before this, probably decades before this, John has sat for decades. The church has been started, Jesus has ascended, and gospels are being written by Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then he wants to write a gospel. He's moved by the Holy Spirit to write a gospel. He writes a bunch of unique stuff to fill in the gaps of the other three. And if you read the other three, it seems to indicate the other authors say that John is thrown into prison right after the baptism of Jesus because it just moves so quickly. But John is trying to set the record straight in verse 24. John had not yet been thrown into prison. He's saying there's a time period, and if you put together from chapter 4, it's probably just a few months, maybe 6 months, maybe a little bit less. There's an overlap period, and we're in the middle of that now. So he's trying to set the record straight. John has not been yet thrown into prison. He will get thrown into prison, and he'll eventually be killed at the hands of King Herod. His head will be put on a platter and brought out to the king. There's a whole setup to that. But he's killed because of his boldness. He continues to preach. He preaches at the king personally for things he's doing that are sinful, and then gets his head put on a platter because of it. But he's a faithful guy to the end, and he dies that way. Okay, so there's the setup to the text. That's kind of all the context I need to give you. What do we have? Okay, so my leading question to this text would be, what virtue does John the Baptist display? No, actually, I'm going to back up. Verse 26. Verse 26 is the last thing I want to talk about. Verse 25. I'm missing 2 verses. Therefore, there arose a discussion on the part of John's disciples with a Jew about purification. Purification they're talking about baptism. That's what baptism was. It was an outward sign of an inward reality of the heart. I want to be purified. I want to be given a new heart. I want to be washed clean, Ezekiel 36, all the things we've said for the last few weeks. And so they would come and be baptized as a sign outwardly. That's what they wanted to happen to their hearts. Pretty simple picture. So there arose a discussion on the part of John's disciples. So not John, but John's disciples, with a Jew, so a random guy, about purification. We get a little bit more information here. Verse 26. And they came to John, meaning the disciples, and said to him, Rabbi, or teacher, he who was with you beyond the Jordan, that is Jesus, to whom you have testified, behold, he is baptizing, and all are coming to him. So there's not a question there. There's just a statement. My opening question is, what do you think what are they doing? What are they trying to do by bringing this to John? John's out baptizing, doing what he's supposed to do, what he's called to do. They, not he, but they get in some argument with the Jew about baptism, and they bring it to John. But they don't say, they give the nature of the conversation in verse 26. They're essentially saying he's baptizing everybody. All are coming to him. What's the point in bringing that to John? Why would they bring that and say, hey, John, just so you know, everybody's coming to Jesus now? Can you venture a guess as to why they would say that?
I do not.
To word it as all are going to him?
Yeah. They have an argument or discussion with some guy, The nature of the discussion apparently is Jesus is baptizing more. That's confirmed in 4 verse 1 that we mentioned.
Yeah.
So why bring that to John like that? You want him to do something? Want him to say something? What do you think?
To get him to go as well. I mean, if it's all, would it not include him?
Okay. I think the word all there is an exaggeration. I think they're a little bit jealous for John. He's their rabbi. He's their teacher. They're identifying as disciples of John the Baptist. John's been on the scene a few months now, and he's the number one guy in Israel. But what's just happened? The cleansing of the temple, Jerusalem, the ministry in Jerusalem that Jesus has done. We saw at the end of chapter 2 that people are starting to believe in him. He's gaining a following. And every indication from chapter 2, 3, and 4 is now Jesus is off and running. His ministry has begun. It's in full-fledged. John's is declining.
John to step it up.
Yeah. I think they're jealous for John. They're saying, we're following you. This guy's, it's great that you're a witness to him. It says, to whom you have testified. He's baptizing and all are coming to him. So number 1, he's baptizing now. That's your thing. And number 2, all are coming to him. It's probably an exaggeration. Not everybody's coming to him. But they're jealous.
More people come to him.
So I think they're trying to incite jealousy into John, trying to get him to
start trouble.
Yeah, basically. They're saying, you were the number one guy.
Right.
And now this is going like this. Do something, here we go. So, sinful motive. They're trying to incite jealousy for John, the same jealousy they have for John. In a way, like, that's great, he's your teacher, but they missed the point. So, that is the lead up to our text. The first, 5 verses give us really what I want to get to in the final few verses. So that's our lead up. Their ministries are going like this. Jesus is getting bigger. John's getting smaller. People are noticing. His disciples then come to him and say, hey, this is going on. You want to do something? What should we do? Now, all the way down to verse 36, which we'll get to those last few verses next week. That's all John the Baptist. One big block quote. So we have, 4 verses this week of what he says. So now my question is, what virtue, what characteristic does John display in his answer? What is he saying, or what's the tone of what he's saying? Is he jealous? What do you see there?
No, he's trying to put Jesus up in front of him, ahead of him, as he lowers himself.
Where do you see that?
Right there it says, you yourself are my witness that I said I am not Christ, but I have been sent ahead of him.
Yeah. Yeah, verse 30 is really the peak of this whole text, I think.
It says that he must get bigger, and he must
increase,
himself.
so I must decrease.
Increase and decrease.
It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
So does he yield to his disciples? His disciples are jealous. They want him to be jealous. Is he jealous?
I don't think so.
No.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because he understands.
So the way I figured we'd structure this text this week, at least from the last 4 verses, is, here's the virtue. It's humility, right? He's humble. That's kind of the overarching lesson, I think. So in these 4 verses, I kind of want to bring out 5 marks of the humble man based on John. That's a good way to think about this text. Give us a little bit of structure. So number 1, from verse 27. John answered and said to him, a man can receive nothing unless it has been given to him from heaven. That sounds like a man who's jealous, a man who's jockeying for position. He's unsure what's going to happen. It's a toss-up. Anybody could make it. We're in competition with each other. Or does it sound like a guy who's resting and this is God's doing? Right?
Yep.
It reminds me of I just thought about last night. John 19. Tony, I don't know how much you know about this. You might know a little more. That one of the trials of Jesus, right before he dies, the morning that he dies, he's brought to Pilate, who's one of the Roman leaders in the area. And they go back and forth. He leaves, comes back, and this is right before he's going to crucify him. Pilate says to him, this is John 19. We'll get there eventually. You do not, he says, he asks him a few questions. Jesus stops answering questions. So he says, you do not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and the authority to crucify you? So he's saying, you better answer me. I can torture you. Jesus answered, you would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above. Pretty bold answer. But what is Jesus resting in there? He's resting in the sovereignty of God. God has set this whole thing up. I rest in that. That's essentially John's answer. A man receives nothing unless it is given to him from above. So, Jesus' ministry is going up, mine's going down, so be it. It is what it is. I can't control who comes in the Bible study, whether it's 2 guys or 10 guys or whatever. It is what it is. Maybe everybody woke up late or whatever. That's God's doing. Can't control that. You control you being faithful to the calling you've been given. You can't control the rest. So the first mark of a humble man is he rests in God's sovereignty. This is a big question. This is something that we need to get to. Where does true, actual, from the heart humility come from? Where do you think it comes from? How do you get like John, where you have seemingly no jealousy, no competition at all, full rest and assurance in God, just cool as a cucumber? He's humble. He's not acting. We take him at his word, right? He, from the heart, is a humble guy. How do you become that? That's where I wish we had Lance. Lance would just start answering every question. And Lance will hear this on the recording. Lance, you weren't here, Lance. Where do you get humility?
Well, it's kind of like that cupcake.
It's uncanny, just like Lance. Maybe to help you with the question.
I want to say just like submitting to him, but that's obviously harder than it is to say. I mean, it's way easier said than done, but I mean, it comes with time.
If you want to change, I have this written down later. That's perfect for now. If you want to change your thoughts and your thinking and your feeling, even in relation to yourself, the Bible makes it clear that what you focus on, what you meditate on, what you put before your eyes and your ears and your mind, what you spend time thinking about, what's rolling around your head, will influence how you think, what you desire, and what you do. It's just a natural progression. So if you believe something and then meditate on it, you will then live your life as if that's true. It's just kind of a universal truism. I think everybody recognizes that. But how do you get actual, legitimate, from the heart humility?
Ed.
Come sit down, Edgar.
No.
We're short a few guys. I probably need to move faster than this.
Come on, Ed.
It's basically understanding where you fall. Who is God? Who are you? How does this whole thing work? If you understand that, you'll be a humble person. If you truly understand that, because God is totally independent. He does whatever he wants. He's completely sovereign. He doesn't need you at all. He doesn't consult you. But who are we? We're totally dependent on God. Christ says it in John 15, I believe. John 14 or 15. That without me you can do nothing. You can't do anything without me. I sustain you. I give you the power to do everything. There's a lot more to be said about that, but that's the basic truth. Who is God? Who am I? And then, really, the kicker is, what has Christ done to bring us together? How can I be reconciled to God? I haven't done anything, right? We learned all about that last few weeks. I can't be born again, can't control that, and the work has already been done for me. That'll ought to humble us. 1 Corinthians 4:7, Paul says this, who regards you as superior? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as if you had not received it? Everything's a gift from God, right? We can't boast in anything. You want to boast because I'm stronger than the next guy? Who gave you that strength? You have a bigger brain than the next guy? Who gave you that brain? You got this opportunity. Who allowed that? God gave it all. So the humble man trusts not in himself but God. He rests in God's sovereignty. That's verse 27. Mark number 2, verse 5. I'm not going to give them to you. I'm trying to lead into these. All right, so the person who doesn't trust in God, what's the negative of that? He doesn't trust in God. When he sees someone else get more than he has, what's his response? I don't trust in God. I don't have that grounding like we just talked about. And I see someone starts a competing Bible study at 5:30 on the other side of the shop, and they got 10 guys and we got 2 guys. What's going to be my response to that if I'm not trusting God?
Hey,
Anger, jealousy, any sort of negative emotion.
Yeah, all the stuff that the disciples of John are trying to incite in him that he won't take the bait from.
right.
Competition. I deserve more than that guy. What do we? I don't think I wrote this down, but I had this thought last night. What do we have as rights as human beings? What right do we have to something? Are we entitled to anything
No.
at all? What do you think, Dylan? These are big questions. I'm just throwing at you one by one.
Yeah,
But
that was a bigger question than just like emotions.
where is Lance when you need him?
What am I entitled to?
Whatever God gives you.
I mean, yeah, that's the Sunday morning.
Now, if you don't believe, repent and believe, what does God give you?
Nothing.
Worse than nothing.
Yeah, worse
Right?
than nothing.
Yeah.
The starting point for all of us is we deserve hell. So if we all deserve hell, and we're sitting here living, breathing, working at this company
Right.
in 21st century America, allowed to live, and then if we believe in Christ, able to pass from death to life and go to heaven forever and escape hell. I mean, it was all grace. We don't deserve any of that. The only thing we deserve is hell, and we're given much, much, much better than that. So there's no room for jealousy. They're trying to get him to be jealous. So number 2, he's not jealous. You just see that in all 4 verses. He's not jealous at all. So if you find yourself getting jealous at stuff like what we just like the scenario we just said, you find yourself getting, and this is a perfect application for us. I know what it's like in Valbody, but for us, it's commission. You stand beside the guy. That guy's building more.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's sort of jockeys for who's building more, whatever. It's very easy to get jealous here.
I really don't.
I get annoyed. Go faster.
I only built 7 last week,
Yeah.
and I'm good with it.
So if you find yourself getting jealous, go back to the basics. Who are you? Who is God? Am I trusting in His sovereignty? Number 3, verse 29. Here's a really cool illustration that John gives. He who has the bride is the bridegroom. The bridegroom is just the groom. Okay, so this is a wedding scenario. He who has the bride is the bridegroom. But the friend of the bridegroom, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. So this joy of mine has been made full. All right, so he just opened up by saying, verse 27, I rest in God's sovereignty. God has brought this upon us. Verse 28, I told you from the beginning I'm not the Christ. Verse 29, he brings in an illustration. Simple illustration, and a little bit of context helps us out a lot. He who has the bride is the groom, we'll say, just for contemporary text. The bride and the groom, this is what this is all about. This is a wedding context, right? But the friend of the groom, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly because of the groom's voice. He's talking about the best man at a wedding. We talked about the wedding in Cana. Weddings were a huge deal. And what happens for 6 months, a year? The guy's making preparations, building the house, getting everything ready. That's why it was such a huge catastrophe at the wedding when he ran out of wine. During that time, the best man, we would call him, the friend of the bridegroom that he's referring to that he is in this illustration, He does the bidding of the groom. Groom wants him to go do this, he goes and does this. You want to make this deal or pick this thing up? He goes and does it. He does that the whole time until the wedding now is come. Everything's ready. He rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. He does everything he wants him to do. That's his job. Why would you not? Your whole job as the best man, do what the groom wants you to do, right? And then eventually, they get married, and what happens? Verse 30. He must increase, I must decrease.
Right.
The husband and wife come together, and the best man doesn't just stay there the whole time. He didn't live with them. He backs off. That's the end of it. That's the way it should be. He's saying, I'm the best man at the wedding. I'm helping out these two. I'm helping out the groom to come to the bride. That's it. Who's the groom? Jesus. Who's the bride? Really, first and foremost, Israel, and then the rest of the world.
Okay.
He's the herald. The king is coming. Make way, make straight the path for the Lord. He's coming through this city. He's the groom's friend. He's trying to get the groom and the bride together successfully, and then he backs off. That's exactly what he does. Great analogy. It just shows you how clear he understands who he is. He knows exactly who he is. So, what's the natural outflow of a person who sees others as more important than himself? It's part of what humility is. If you see everybody around you as more important than yourself, you want to meet their needs, what will you naturally do? You won't be jealous, trust in God, all these things we're talking about, but action-wise, what will you do?
You keep saying Harold, and all I keep thinking in my head is la 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 la.
That was deep, Tony.
I hate the Tony on that one.
Can't help it.
Are you going to be selfish?
No.
No? So you're going to be selfless. So how does that manifest?
You're going to show Christ through your actions. I should say.
Yes. And what kind of actions did Christ show? Selfish actions? Selfless actions?
I'm selfless.
So if we're doing selfless acts for people, what would we call that? Are we taking from them, or are we giving to them? We're serving them, right?
Right.
I'm trying to lay on a platter.
Not yourself, selfless.
So the natural outflow of a person who is humble is service. He serves others. That's the whole point of the analogy in verse 29. A humble man is a giving man. You meet a humble man, I will show you a man who gives of himself. And also, I got to keep this down here if you don't read my notes.
I can't see that.
And a humble man is a joyful man. Look at the end of verse 29. So this joy of mine has been made full. He's saying, I've done this. I'm doing my duty. Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Jesus, Israel, Israel, Jesus. I've preached it for months. I've done my duty, and he's continuing to do it. He's going to continue on until somebody takes him prisoner, right? If they didn't, he'd probably still be preaching. That's okay. So this joy of mine has been made full. Now my question is, there's only one guy in the room. This is for both of us. What do we love most? Serving people or being served? If you take a look at your life, it's convicting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like to be served. I like my wife gets me things, and things go easy that day, and everyone seems to be gathering around me doing what I want them to do. Mark 10:45, though, Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." So if he can come to serve, how much more do we? Now, what time is it?
15.
Okay, so I'll move. We got 2 big points to end on. Verse 30. These are pretty easy points at this point. I got 2 points from verse 30. He must increase, I must decrease.
Accurate.
All right, this is an easy question, but the humble man puts others before himself. All right, we established that. Now, who's at the top of that list? If he's at the bottom, everyone else is above him. Who's at the top?
Jesus.
Jesus, that's right. We live to serve Christ. Now, if you go back to chapter 1, you'll remember, we've touched on this a few times now. Right. Really, verses 4 to 9 talk about Jesus as being the light, the spiritual light. Verse 5, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. What does light do?
It illuminates the road.
Yeah, it illuminates. It reveals.
Come on, fellas.
Morning.
Hey, young bud.
The light illuminates or reveals. It reveals what otherwise would be left in darkness. Okay? So Jesus does. He reveals the Father. He reveals salvation. He reveals the way of salvation. He reveals spiritual truth to the world. If Jesus didn't come and do that, we wouldn't know it. We'd just be in the dark because it has to be revealed. And that's why Jesus is known as the light from chapter 1.
Oh, shit, I'm like, what's 6:17?
I know. We got so much good stuff. I got to move quickly.
He's almost done.
Go back to John 3, verse 19 and 20. We remember this. Everyone who does evil hates the light, does not come to the light, for fear his deeds will be exposed. But he who practices the truth comes to the light, so that his deeds may be manifested has been wrought in God. The light reveals who we are, right? It doesn't just reveal salvation and Christ and God and how these things work. It reveals us. And you see the two categories of people, those who run from the light and those who run to the light.
Ones that like their sin are in the dark.
Here's the point from that. From this whole section in verse 30. The man who sees Christ clearly sees himself clearly. If you understand exactly who Christ is, you understand yourself. And that produces true humility, right? He's given us everything. I think it's no coincidence, but the guy who sees Christ most clearly at this point in the story is the most humble. I don't think that's a coincidence. Also, though, he has the biggest ministry. So who has more room to be prideful than John? Nobody. He's got everything. If he's not grounded in his knowledge and understanding of who God is and who he is, he's going to fall right into the trap of the same trap that his disciples are falling into. He's going to take the bait, but he doesn't. Because he's grounded in who he is, who Christ is. Popularity wouldn't change it. And by the way, Matthew 11:11, Jesus says that John is the greatest man in the world up until his time. Jesus says that of John. And this guy still doesn't take the bait. So he's shielded from pride because of his understanding of who he is and God is. And then the inverse is true, the opposite to that. If you don't know Christ well, you don't know yourself well. Last point, and then I'll kind of conclude. The end of verse 30, pretty simple. The outline writes itself. I must decrease. So it's not Christ must increase and I'll increase with him. He increases, I decrease. If you exalt Christ, you must necessarily bring yourself low. You can't have one without the other. Turn to Matthew 20, if you know where it is. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I feel the pressure of moving quickly. Thank you, Tony.
Sorry, I do too. I got a dino fell right on my bench.
All right, verse 25. Some disciples come to Jesus trying to figure out who's the greatest of the 12. Jesus called them to himself, verse 25, and said, You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. It is not this way among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave. And then there's that different version of that same verse. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many. People call this like an upside down kingdom. This is the economy of God. You want to go highest, you have to go to lowest. What's up, Reggie? That's what John's doing. John's the greatest man of his time, and he's also the most humble man of his time. That's not a coincidence. Here's where we'll end. Philippians 2. We've been here before. Tony, I don't expect you to find it. It's okay.
You got to put me on blast like that.
Philippians 2. Philippians 2.
Ephesians.
Philippians 2.
Something.
I'm moving.
Oh, I skipped right over it.
Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus. This is Paul talking. What attitude is that? Who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped or a thing to be held onto, but emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant or a slave, and being made in the likeness of men, he became a man. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And you see the principle there at the end. For this reason, God highly exalted him and gives him a name above everything. He went the lowest, so he gets the highest. Right? That's the principle. And if Christ became a slave when he was God, He was the Son of Man who came to serve, not to be served. How much more do we? We are slaves. We are completely spiritually bankrupt and dependent on Him. We are to be the lowest of the low. And then the conclusion. How do we stack up with that? Are we humble? Or are we self-righteous? Think about that this week. If you understand who God is, who you are, you will naturally be a humble person. If you don't, you will naturally be a prideful person. Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Any prayer requests?